Often regarded as the heart of the supernatural and the birthplace of paranormal research, we find ourselves in the storied city of Cambridge. From the awe-inspiring splendour of its world-renowned colleges to the ancient shadowed thoroughfares, every inch of this city is awash with its incredibly rich and often dark history. Though a handful of stories I'm sure some would prefer were forgotten. So pour yourself a drink, and turn down the lights, and join me as we explore the notorious hauntings of the city of Cambridge. There was once a time when this region of southeast England was nothing more than marshy fenlands, vast areas of low-lying wetland peppered with islands of higher ground. These islands inhabited by the men and women that were able to forge a livelihood fishing and fowling the fens. Around campfires, these isolated communities shared stories, folk tales of the mystical and supernatural, the spirits of the fens. Even as these communities grew into the towns and villages of East Anglia, this culture of grave storytelling and fascination with the otherworldly remained. Here in Cambridge, for the first time, tales of the supernatural melded with the theological and scientific minds of the Victorian era. In 1855, in the halls of Trinity College, fellows began discussing the field of paranormal phenomena, conceiving the idea of the notorious Ghost Club, considered pioneers of paranormal research. To this day, still investigating claims of the supernatural, considered the oldest organisation of its kind. For a city with such an intrinsic relationship with belief in the supernatural, it's not surprising that Cambridge has many eerie hauntings of its own. Our first stop on our journey of haunted Cambridge brings us to the gates of St John's College. St John's, known for its plethora of ghostly phenomena. From glimpses of shadow figures in the library, to disembodied groans echoing through its halls, haunted, perhaps with good reason. Established in 1511 on the grounds of the former Hospital of St John, the college stands atop what was once a vast burial site. It wasn't until building works in 2010 that the mass graves were uncovered beneath the college buildings. Initially feared to be yet another of Cambridge's extensive plague pits, they were found to be burial grounds of the medieval hospital that predated the college, with over 1,000 souls found to be contained. When discussing the ghost stories of St John's, one name bleeds to the surface. A spirit not tied to the hospital, but to the college itself. In the late 18th century, a young student named James Wood walked the halls of St John's. Too poor to afford even a candle, he spent his nights on the shadowed staircase, borrowing the glow that spilled from the other rooms to complete his studies. The stone stairwell, so cold, Wood resorted to tying straw around his feet just to stay warm. These were grueling years for Wood. Though driven by his passion for his field and unwavering discipline, he rose to become master of the college. But death would not end his vigil. Even now, it's said he drifts back to the staircase where he once kept his lonely watch. Many a student, returning after dark, have glimpsed his spectral figure, hunched over in the half-light. A seemingly residual apparition of Wood, still haunting the stone stairwell of the second court, where he reluctantly spent many a long cold night. The ticking of the chronophage, or the time eater, tells us that we're approaching the College of Corpus Christi, the world-famous clock signifying the impermanence of the material and the fleeting nature of our human ideas and ambitions as each second is devoured by the monster. On the hour, no chime of bells, but the rattle of chains and the strike of a hammer on a wooden coffin. Beneath the clock, the Latin inscription translates to, "The world and its desires pass away." And while many of the college's alumni have forged a legacy to outlast their mortal existence, the tragic tale of forsaken Master Henry Butts and his restless spirit reverberate through time like no other, even in death, refusing to forgo his duty to the college and students he served. Having been educated here at Corpus Christi, Henry Butts would dedicate his life to the college, becoming master in 1626 and ultimately becoming Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cambridge. That dedication unwavering through the most trying of times, the bubonic plague outbreak of 1630. As his students and colleagues fled for their safety, Butts opted to remain, assisting the civic authorities to contain the plague in Cambridge, tending to the sick and the dying left behind by the more fortunate. Though such acts of selflessness seldom spare a personal toll. Butts, writing, "Alone, a destitute and forsaken man, not a scholar with me in the college, not a scholar seen by me without." As he witnessed those in his care perish, his isolation only deepened. After failing to attend service at Great St Mary's, he was discovered deceased in his room in the Master's Lodge on Easter morning of 1632, having taken his own life by hanging. Even to this day, the sorrowful apparition of Henry Butts roams the halls and the gardens of Corpus Christi College in his white church garb with a noticeable open wound to his neck. It's said his presence is accompanied by a drop in temperature and a profound feeling of sadness. Legend has it that attempts to move his spirit on have been made by students through the centuries, though Henry Butts remains very much a part of the college he gave everything for. While we're here on Trumpington Street, locals tell of an unsettling story from a house along this road. Towards the end of the 19th century, a well-to-do woman was interested in purchasing a house on Trumpington Street. It was arranged for her to be shown around the property, though it was on this tour that the previous occupants may have just made their presence known. The tour began as expected, until they entered the drawing room. There, her eyes were drawn to a single painting, a woman in a muted green dress, her gaze fixed and unyielding, her face twisted into a scowl that seemed to follow every step. The visitor felt it at once, the cold weight of being watched. As they prepared to leave, the owner, half in jest, mentioned the rumour of the ghost said to haunt the house. A woman in a green dress. From the painting, the visitor replied sharply. But the owner looked confused. Together they hurried back to the drawing room. To the woman's horror, the portrait was gone. In its place hung only an unassuming landscape, serene, yet leaving behind the chilling sense that the lady in green was still watching. The ghost story of Christ College is one of the most infamous and sorrowful. An apparition that drifts soundlessly along the edges of the swimming pool, his presence heavy with an air of wordless brooding. Those who have seen him swear him to be Christopher Round, once a respected fellow of the college. In life, Round held a secret flame for Mary Clifford, a woman whose affections were already claimed by his colleague, Philip Collier. One fateful night, the love triangle reached its breaking point. Clifford's two lovers, having allegedly drunken themselves into a stupor, staggered together through the shadowed college grounds. Their senses dulled and their steps unsteady. The pair passed the college's open-air swimming pool. Collier, straying a hair too close to the edge, fell into the water. Watching his colleague thrashing at the water's surface, Round found himself paralysed by the selfish desire to have Mary Clifford all to himself. If that meant the untimely demise of Collier, then so be it. And so, Philip Collier perished that night under the full moon, an expressionless gaze of Christopher Round. His death ruled a drunken accident, as Round sought to avoid any suspicion. As the inquest unfolded, it would be uncovered that Collier wasn't drunk when he died, but intoxicated on a concoction of narcotics. He'd been experimenting with anaesthetics as the pair's shared love interest, Mary, was suffering from a progressive illness, his efforts all to ease her suffering. Collier's death condemning Mary to a slow, painful demise. Round for the rest of his life carried his immense regret. Only on his deathbed would he reveal the truth of what really happened that night. It's said that should you pass the old mulberry tree next to the pool in the depths of night under a full moon, you might just catch a glimpse of the spectre of Round, the apparition recognisable by his distinctive beaver hat. In Daniel Codd's Mysteries of Cambridgeshire, the apparition is described as a tall, stooped, elderly-looking man, his hands clasped behind his back, as though he is deep in sombre contemplation. haunting the pool as he in life was haunted by the guilt of his actions. As the evening draws in, I have one final story to leave you with, that being the trapped souls of the Eagle. The Eagle pub, famous for being the local watering hole of scientists from the nearby Cavendish laboratory, and hosting Francis Crick and James Watson when announcing the secret to life, their pivotal discovery of how DNA carries genetic information. Though the pub has roots as a coaching inn, dating all the way back to 1667, making it the second oldest pub in Cambridge. Though any discussion of the Eagle is incomplete without mention of its infamous haunting. So problematic, it's written into the building's lease. Legend has it that in the 1700s, a fire tore through the packed inn. Its origins uncertain, but its destruction absolute. As the chaos of panicked patrons flooded into the street, no one was to notice the small hands pressed against the upstairs window. 3 young children trapped in one of the tavern's upper rooms, sadly succumbing to the thick black smoke rising through the building. For years following the tragic incident, strange occurrences were common in the pub, but curiously, the activity seemed to centre around a single guest room upstairs, the room where the children perished. When the window was closed, guests would report a sudden and intense feeling of suffocation, only lifting once the window was thrown open. Thus it was written into the pub's lease that the window to the room must be kept ajar at all times, allowing the spirits to leave as they please, the window remaining open to this very day. I can confirm, every time I've passed the Eagle or stopped for a drink, the window's open, and it always reminds me of the story. Perhaps nothing more than legends, fragments of folklore passed from one generation to the next. Or perhaps the next time you wander these colleges after dark, you might just feel a chill at your back, glimpse a figure lurking in the shadows.